This is Charlie Parsons for Boxing Social in association with Betfred here on Zoom with the main man, Mr. Gareth Davies. We didn't manage to catch up yesterday, so a man of his word, he pings me a message. He said, let's do a Zoom. Here we are. Gareth, how are we, mate?
We are cheeky Charlie Parsons. There wasn't time for a cheeky 10 minutes together yesterday. It was a busy day, even though I know we're going to talk about it. It's a strange matchup in lots of ways for where both men are. But yeah, it was quite a busy, bustling afternoon yesterday. I'm sure you got plenty of content. I know I did. For all the people I work for, I thought it's always interesting being around Fury anyway. I don't care what people say about, oh, he's not doing this or he's not doing that, or, you know, it's one of the biggest stories in our sport. So time with Tyson Fury is always good. I got a little bit of time with him yesterday. I hope you did.
Yeah, we did.
You know, it's always worthwhile, isn't it? It's always interesting. And ditto Derek Chisora and ditto Bob Arum and Frank Warren being there. So there was a lot of narrative yesterday, other than, you know, them making this official announcement of Fury versus Chisora 3 on December the 3rd at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where have they sold lots of tickets already?
I don't know. I heard that there was like a 35k queue, but now I know that people are able to get on and buy tickets. I've got a few friends who have purchased tickets. So I don't know how well it's sold at the minute, but I know that at the start there was definitely a good few thousand in that queue.
Well, I was glad to be there yesterday. I think it's the Tyson Fury show now in lots of ways. I mean, the worst thing that can actually happen is Derek Chisora to, you know, knock him out with a freak punch. I mean, because as Bob Arum explained yesterday, both to me and at the press conference and to lots of other people, I'm sure, that he was promoting Tommy Morrison back in, I'm thinking late 80s, early 90s, and you know, they were lining up for a big fight with Lennox Lewis, and Tommy Morrison was a very popular boxer, very interesting character. Go and look him up. Very interesting character with lots of stories, an actor, a playboy, all those kind of things. And you know, a real liver of life. And you know, he got knocked out by Michael Bent in a warm-up fight, and the Lennox Lewis Morrison fight never happened. That would have been a big fight. Lewis would have knocked him out, frankly, but it would have sold at the time. And Bob said things go wrong, and so they'll be having a few kittens in the first 2 or 3 rounds when they step into the ring. I think Derek doing the shoulder roll and Len throwing overhead rights and, you know, trying to go to the body of Fury, and Fury going like this. He'll be jiggling his body, go on, and you can do it. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then Fury will hit him a load of times. You know, and it's going to be a bit of fun, I think.
Well, let me ask you regarding the backlash, because myself, I understand Tyson Fury's got to fight someone. Obviously, Joe Joyce wasn't the fight to be made, but sort of from a business standpoint, I can get why you wouldn't put Joe Joyce in there, knowing that he's going to, at some point, get that mandatory title shot anyway down the line. In terms of, obviously, they've gone for a ranked fighter. A lot of people are saying, why not Bacoli? Why not, you know, a couple of these other guys? I personally get that they've gone Derek Chisora. You know, it's a name that sells. It's a name that, look, if Tyson's got to fight someone, it's a different Chisora than we've seen in the past. I'm not saying the result's going to be any different, but can you understand the making of the fight? If Tyson, like he says, he wants to get out end of November or start of December, do we have to go for someone like Derek Chisora, who the British public know?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Martin Bacoli, who's a really decent heavyweight. There's no question about it. And Billy Nelson, who I have a lot of respect for, I've known a long time. Could have been Michael Hunter, could have been Luis Ortiz, but he'd have done exactly the same to them, in my view. Martin Bacoli would have been a challenge for a few rounds. Not going to beat Tyson Fury. He hasn't been in against that level. Look what Fury's chin's like as well. You know, he's got up 4 times from Deontay Wilder's dropping him. And like, no one else seems to be able to live with Deontay Wilder's power. So, you know, I think when Chisora and Fury rowed Joyce Parker on the ringside, and I was very lucky to be literally doing the interview with them on TalkSport when it happened, I think that really pushed the fight over the line at the time. And Derek's very good at selling fights.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of undersold. He tried to play the villain yesterday and then claimed he was gagged and all these things. I mean, I got caught asking him on one of your rival YouTube channels because I was hanging about at the end, just getting a final few things, trying to support Frank Warren's thing with the Deborah charity as well. That was fascinating.
That was nice, yeah.
I can't remember her name now. You might remember her name, but she's got butterfly skin disease where the skin comes off. She has her body wrapped, her arms and stuff, and basically the skin's coming away all the time. 4 hours a day having your limbs and stuff wrapped. You know, she's a beautiful person, and I had a long chat with her. Actually, I had to sit down and chat. I'd like to do something on that written. It's nice to mention it's the Deborah charity, and they're trying to raise 5 million for those people that have that disease, and because they're trying to create these drugs that actually really curb the pain, because it's a very painful disease and they're in pain all the time. It's a really weird thing. She was with Tyson Fury yesterday as well.
And I think a nice touch on Tyson donating that 10k as well.
Oh, absolutely. What, the 10k that he won from Frank Warren earlier? Yeah, exactly. That Derek Chisora didn't rob him of during the press conference.
Yeah, I think the one who was worried.
But that's what I mean. You know, they're both good promoters, you know, as are Aram and Warren. That's not better than good. These people are long-standing in the sport. And so I think it's a fun dance. The festive lights will be on. It'll be December. It's not a Christmas present that we wanted. Yeah, it's not the Christmas present. It's not the Christmas present Fury fans or diehard boxing fans that have wanted, because Fury Joshua would have been awesome. But even though they pulled him out facing, I do understand why Eddie Hearn and 258 management have done it, because they'll make more money with Joshua if he doesn't get beaten now by Fury. And it's a big risk that he gets beaten, and well beaten.
Well, Eddie Hearn said that Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith come out and said that they'd had their conversations with George Warren and they were trying to persuade George Warren to get. Well, no, sorry. George Warren was adamant and trying to persuade. He's got the elf bar back, trying to persuade Tyson Fury to allow the negotiations to go on longer. Do you feel that the negotiations should have been allowed to go on longer for that fight, or do you think that they sort of had their due course with that?
No, they weren't going to sign. They weren't going to sign.
Another name that people have spoke about.
Do you really think they were going to sign? Do you really think they were going to sign? Do you really think Joshua was going to get in the ring with Fury in December?
I would have liked to see it.
I know we'd all have liked to seen it, but I think it was it was appetizing to them for a couple of weeks, and they were weighing it up the whole time and thinking, no, it's probably not the best move, because he probably will fight. Who are they talking about? Alto Valin next, or someone like that. He needs to get a couple of knockouts under his belt.
I do also think that's fair enough. I think if you're Joshua, come off
totally
losses to Usyk, you have to go in there and build up a resume for yourself again and come off the back of some strong wins.
3 losses.
His confidence right now will not be where it
all
was.
Of it.
All of it. Yeah,
all of it. But I mean, that's my view. I could be wrong. They could be right, that, you know, we don't know the exact goings on of the meetings, Charlie, but you know, like you say, you look down the list. I mean, if that's the point on it, look down the list and you see who's there and who actually sells. They moved it to London because it wouldn't have sold in Cardiff in the same way. What's Chisora? Is he Arsenal?
I actually don't think so. No, he's definitely not Tottenham.
No, he's not Tottenham.
Because he said he was going to take a dump in the toilets before he went. So he's definitely not Tottenham.
Oh, okay. But, you know, it'll be the Tyson Fury show again. Yeah. You know, Derek, look, here's what you've got to say about Derek, to be fair to him. They didn't really make big bones about this yesterday. He's just beaten Kubrat Pulev by the narrowest of margins, in my view. It could have gone the other way as well. He gave Alexander Usyk a really, really good fight.
Yeah, good fight.
Yes, that was a year and a half ago. I think it was now 2 years ago, is it? A year and a half ago. And look what Usyk did with Joshua. And Joshua's different kettle of fish to Fury, I know. But there's a little bit of form there. You know, the loss to Dillian White, his first loss to Dillian White in Manchester, that amazing fight. I had it for Derek, that fight.
Yeah, a lot of people had it. I've sort of.
Yeah, it was a brilliant fight. It was a brilliant ding-dong fight. So Derek's a very resilient, tough heavyweight. I just rewatched him and David Haye actually this morning because it popped up and I watched a little doc on that fight 10 years ago. It was July 10 years ago. And Derek's a better fighter now than he was then. He's more
undoubtedly.
Yeah, he's more weather-worn. Tyson Fury's a different fighter. They were pretty much novices in 2012, not so much in 2014, because Fury went on to beat Klitschko after beating Christian Hammer, I think it was, after Derek, something like that. And, so they know what they're doing. They know how to sell a fight. They know how to promote a fight. And I think they'll deliver something decent in the ring. But I think Fury is probably too good now for Derek to beat him.
Let me ask you about a Russian, and I know I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this name. I think it's Arsenbek Makmulyov or something along those lines. He fought last time out against Carlos Takam, and something else that I sort of have seen people come out with on social media and say, why not this guy instead of Derek Chisora? I'm sure you'll be able to squash that, but just firsthand on my eyes, he didn't look the polished article against Carlos Takam. I watched that fight. It went sort of, I think the fight went the distance in the end. Okay, he sort of dominated, but I don't think that that's a guy that's going to give Tyson Fury any more troubles than Derek Chisora would.
Yeah, and Arslanbek Makhmudov, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
He look, put it this way. Arslan Makhmudov, he's Russian for a start, okay?
Which causes problems straight away.
But there's an issue at the moment around, Russia and Ukraine, and that wouldn't work too well that Fury's fighting Usyk next, okay? That will have come into the thing.
Oh, of course.
I know he's got 14 knockouts from 15 fights, but, who outside you and me talking about him right now knows who Makhmudov is?
Yeah, and his last fight was in a small venue in Quebec, in Canada, I believe, so...
Look, if this was tennis or it was, Champions League, he'd have to fight him because he'd be the number 4. I think Ruiz. I'm just having a look at the rankings. I was having a look when you were asking that question. I was looking at the rankings now. Wilder 1, Ruiz 2, Frank Sanchez 3. So Wilder and Ruiz are signed up to fight, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's, and Frank Sanchez. But you get a Cuban over. Frank's a very smart little mover. I don't think he beats Tyson Fury. It's a decent fight. But if you're going on the true WBC rankings, you'd have gone for Sanchez or Makhmudov, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have sold as much as
exactly.
Fury and Chisora. And boxing's a sport, but it's a business. And at this level, it's very much a business.
It's a business, yeah.
And that's what's happened here. It's a business call. Derek's got a following. He's a cult figure. There's no doubt he's a cult figure. It was fun having him there yesterday. Imagine if we'd had someone who came along, said a few lines from a translator, and then disappeared. Instead, we had Derek Chisora walking in front of Tyson Fury interviews, and not that that's
calling him a Timbuktu, all sorts.
Yeah, saying Frank Warren should be in a dress because he's using Tyson Fury's credit card or whatever it was he's saying. Saying you gagged me, Frank.
Builds the narrative.
Yeah, well, I don't even think he needs to. I think they're both just being themselves.
Yeah.
I always worry with those two that they'll kick off.
Yeah, I did. I thought that something might have little.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching that Haye Chisora thing. The other day, and I was at that brawl in Munich in 2012, and Haye and Chisora brawled afterwards. And Del Boy, he'd kissed an opponent, he'd bitten an opponent, he'd spat water in Vladimir's face, he'd slapped Vitaly at the weigh-in. I think I can say this now. Derek told me at the time. I beat Derek up at that day. It was snowing in Munich before the fight, in the fight week. This is a joke, but it's true. I beat Derek up in the snowball fight, yeah. And that's when I first got to know Derek, and I really liked him, and we hit it off. And he's hard to work. Derek used to be hard to interview and hard to work with, believe it or not. Because if he was in a particular mood, he would not give you answers.
Oh, I agree.
He can still do that today.
Even now, we get that side of Derek.
Yeah, but he's a good guy. I did a really, really fascinating interview, deep interview with him for DAZN, for this off the cuff series that I do. I've done about 7 or 8 interviews for them in the series off the cuff. We sit in a room with 4 or 5 cameras, and I've got 2 hours with them pretty much, or an hour and a half, and we go deep. We go narrow and we go deep. So you try and get really down into subjects. And he gave me a phenomenal interview. They only cut those interviews to like 10 or 15 minutes. But it was really good. And it just showed he really displayed what a warrior was. He said, he'd still be looking for fights when he was 6 foot under. But, at the time, Derek went a really good 12 rounds with Vitaly Klitschko. And even though Vladimir was the #1 in the world at the time, Vitaly probably would have beaten Vladimir, I think. Not that they would ever fought, which would have been amazing if they had. But so Derek's got form, and I think he's a viable opponent. It's not the opponent you want. As I said, it's not Christmas. The lights will be on. It'll be festive, and people are praying that it won't be rain. And if it is, they'll have umbrellas and mechs. I was going to reveal to you, Derek said he was even going to piss on Vitaly's leg. That's what he was thinking about the way. And I know, I'm glad he didn't. I mean, you never know if he meant it or not, but he told me that on the stairs going outside after.
Wouldn't surprise me, Gareth.
We were in this store called Car de Vey. It's like Selfridges or something in Munich, on the 3rd floor where the press conference was. Yeah, it was. Those are funny times. They were.
Let me ask you, I don't know if you managed to speak to any of the guys yesterday to find out. I didn't get frank myself. My colleague Harry did. He was in the building before all of us, so props to him. Do we know why this fight, as obviously you said it doesn't sell as well in Cardiff, but they've got to be taking some sort of weather precaution, because if it tips it down on December the 3rd, it's an open air stadium. What do we do there?
Everyone wears a mech. They'll have 60,000 of those raincoats made up from China, or 80,000, or how many they get. And then everyone will have one. You think
it's the right decision to go outdoors in December?
Well, it's not my choice. It's not. I mean, but look, that it's a sensible choice to come to a London stadium.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Fury is well known in London. Chisora is London. The Cardiff's terrible for hotel situations. You've got to stay all over the place. It's the same when the rugby's on. It's not great. It's got the roof. What the biggest surprise for me, Cheeky Charlie, is that they do not build football stadiums with retractable roofs. I don't get it.
I find it weird.
But why you're building what are they cost now? 250 million, and you don't put a retractable roof in? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Or get one fitted, or I don't know, just do it. Mistake not to have it, but maybe it's part of an infrastructure build, or that you're not allowed permission to do it, or whatever it is. I'm sure if it was easy to do, they'd do it. But yeah, they've got to take that risk. I think the rain came down yesterday pretty heavily.
It was.
No, maybe that was it, saying, "Here's the rain now. You can have a gift on December the 3rd." Hopefully things work out. When Hay fought, mentioning the Klitschkos, that was in rain in Dusseldorf. I think we went to for that. Yeah, that was awful that night. Hay with his toes and slipping all over the ring and leaning on Klitschko, and that was a terrible night.
Right. Let me go one more just before I head off. Look, we're sort of at the back of the Eubank Jr-Benn saga. I imagine more will come out. Caught up with both Frank Smith and Eddie Hearn in the last week or so. They're saying that there's legal proceedings going on behind closed doors. I'd say I got a fair amount out of Eddie Hearn, considering the circumstances. Asked him about, the public hypocrisy, deemed from the public as to, what he said in the past, and then his movements regarding this failed test as such. What do we expect to unveil? Obviously, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors with it all, but, they've said themselves a B sample 99.9% the same as the A sample. So where do we go with this process now? Because we're still waiting to hear things will unveil, but where's your head at with it?
Well, the Benn side will mount their defence with their boxing team, their sports science team, their nutrition team, their legal team. That'll go to UKAD. UKAD will look at the levels and the traces of I've forgotten what it's called now. Is it climafame?
Yeah.
And then they'll just report back to the boards, and the board will make a statement about the decision based on the UKAD recommendations. And I think Ben will probably go up before the board and put his explanation to them as well. They're very confident about getting him off.
Yeah.
There is talk about, a second test out there that no one's proven yet. So we'll see, but that'll play out in the next, I reckon, 4 to 6 weeks. These things are never quick, and a lot of it goes on behind closed doors. And the only way we find out is by pushing people and asking them. And while they can hide behind their not hide behind their lawyers, while it's kind of sub judice, if you like, if it's underneath the legal process, then they can't really speak because they do jeopardize their cases.
Yeah,
but we're all I don't know if we all are, but there's a lot of us talking to people behind the scenes and asking. I haven't spoken to Conor Benn, I haven't spoken to Tony Sims or Nigel Benn already beyond fight week last week. I saw Frank Smith last week. I didn't go into detail with him on it. They're just mounting their defense. We've seen interviews that they're given. They're not really saying a lot about it, but that'll be the process now. And then the decision's made. And a lot of boxers are able to prove their innocence in these cases, But I do think that it was a very difficult week for boxing, very difficult week because, the optics on it didn't look good, regardless of the situation, how strong and watertight their case is. There's so little transparency around that all it left was very murky water for everyone to deal in. Anyone that wanted to have a pop at boxing could do it and say, look, it doesn't work. And there are things in the system that don't work, and they are going to refer to other, tests. A test is a test. If you test positive for something, you need the case to prove it wrong, because it's not. It's a bit like, people think you're having rows all the time in the sport, in the industry with people. You're not. You disagree with things and you believe that things should be done a certain way, but you're not screaming and shouting at each other over it. It's, as I said earlier, boxing is a business, professional boxing, as much as a sport. And you always have to remember that. And also that this is a fight. It's a fight. It's a dangerous fight every time someone fights, It's not a kick around with a football. And that football can be dangerous. It's a highly skilled sport. Horse racing is dangerous. All these things are dangerous, but at the end of the day, this is a fight between two human beings where they're punching each other in the head and in the body and to the organs. And can't let two people go in there especially when one's weight trained. They looked even worse. All these things, all these layers on top of it. The photos of Eubank Jr. weight train, all those kind of things. I know you got to leave. You got to go rather than me. So it didn't work, and it was a hard time for boxing, but it'll play out. We'll get the answers eventually.
Well, let me ask you one more. What is next for Eubank Jr? Because in my eyes, and I think a lot of the public's eyes, after a camp like that, I imagine obviously you take a few weeks and you chill out and you do what you want, but putting your body through that, you want to be out before the end of the year or early 2023.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure.
At 34 years old, do you not think that?
I think some people who've had really hard weight cuts are not the same for a while. And I think it'd be better to replenish his body and just be around for a little while after make that weight cut before going into a hard camp again and getting naturally back to his weight, and just making sure that everything, because he did look really emaciated. I know he was only at that weight for probably 2 hours, 4 hours, if that.
Still a lot for the body for.
Yeah, I think so. So take your time. Take your time. It's a shame. Look, I'd like to have seen the fight. I had Eubank the favourite. I thought he'd have won it. He might have schooled him. He might have had real troubles with the weight cut and his body might not have been very good on the night. But the right thing happened. You don't put someone else in a ring with another fighter when they've tested positive for a banned substance. And because the names of Eubank and Benn were making it such a big fight, the event could not go ahead.
Especially on that as well, yeah.
So that's why it you know, the poor old undercard lost out and everything. And so, you know, again, there's not another sport similar to that. Well, there is mixed martial arts, but fight sports are like that. But yeah, it had to be pulled.
Well, Gareth, top man, as always, thank you for your time for Boxing.
Pleasure.
Just a final message?
Peace out.
Love it. Love it.